Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Paraspar new lecture series, Reading the Past, organized by the Office of Communications, Indian Institute of Science. Often, to grapple what is happening in the present, we need to, understand and explore what had happened in the past. And this series attempts to do that. We will be exploring certain aspects of the history. And to begin this lecture series, we have today noted journalist and author Amandeep Sandu, who will speak on Punjab Journey Through the Faultlines. We welcome you, Aman.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, to give a brief introduction of Amandeep Sandu, he has earned a master's in English literature from the University of Hyderabad. He then did a diploma in journalism from Asian School of Journalism. He joined the Academy Scholars Solitude, Stuttgart, Germany for a 2-year fellowship. Amandeep has written fiction, non-fiction, essays, opinion pieces, and reviews. The books that he has authored include CPR Lives, published in 2008, Roll of Honor, published in 2012. The novel was nominated for the Hindu Prize 2013 and has been translated into Punjabi. In late 2019, Amandeep published his non-fiction book, Punjab Journey Through the Fault Lines, which is part reportage, part memoir, part contextual history. Amandeep's written recent short ebook on India's mental health in the times of corona outbreak is Bravado to Fear to Abandonment, Mental Health and COVID-19 Lockdown. Amandeep's essay and short stories have appeared in various anthologies, magazines and website. He also writes for Caravan, Scroll, The Hindu Business Line and others. For some time, Aman has been working on the novel, The Memory Maker. We are very happy to have you, Aman, and yes, please go ahead with your lecture.
Okay, thank you so much for inviting me. May I make a request to anybody in the audience, 2 or 3 or 4 people, to at least put on your webcam, because already speaking like this remotely seems so odd. And then speaking to a computer screen full of round circles with just initials seems even weird, like I just like to look at some faces when I'm talking. Thank you so much. Sarah, you have a very interesting way of blurring your background, like I don't know what you do there. There is one huge stream of light coming into me from somebody else's this thing, but anyway, thank you very much. Yeah. Well, Bitasta spoke to me 2 days back and I was quite excited about coming here. We were in conversation for about 2 weeks. But you know what? Very frankly, today I just don't feel like speaking. I'm just constantly looking at what is happening in Afghanistan, how the Taliban is taking over, and all this modern country and systems and democracies and human rights and big nations involvement and all that has come cropper. I mean, 9/11 happened 20 years back, and today, almost at the end of 2 decades, we are back to square one. I mean, why did all that happen? What was the need? What was the need to kill thousands of people, invest trillions of dollars, and get to what? Back to the same thing. This way in which the world functions distresses me completely. If you look at the blurb of my book, it somewhere says that Aman went to Punjab to do this book to fill a hole in his heart. And Punjab, the India Punjab and the Pakistan Punjab are just neighbors of this Afghanistan. And we are all the similar regions, similar kind of people, and look at where we are today. And my hole in my heart about Punjab, okay, translated into some kind of empathy. I think when I wrote the book, I processed everything I understood. But where is empathy for the whole region actually? And what have we made of these regions within our national discourses? And look at where India is right now. I mean, like, just geopolitically look at it. We are ringed from all sides. I just put up a Facebook message. I think we are like goats or sheep bleating in a pen, circled all around by China, by Afghanistan, by Pakistan. Down below, the ports of Sri Lanka have been taken over. Mauritius, there is a camp there. I mean, I don't know where we are going as a nation. I mean, you guys, I deeply respect scientists. I deeply respect what you do. I love IISc. I've been there many a times. I could have been a science person, but I chose to study humanities and arts. But even look at the other catastrophe that has happened in the last 2 years. I mean, the whole COVID-19 thing. And as all countries, not only India did something which is one part of it, but all the countries in the world just disregarded science. We completely gave in to our primal fears, our sense of, oh, this thing is bad, oh, this is a stigma, oh, I will get the illness. And government after government, high officials after national leaders, they just kept either denying that there was a virus or saying that it's going to get contained very soon, or whatever we were doing in India, like beating plates and lighting lamps and all that. Is there any science in how policy is made? How nations respond to catastrophes? And, my book is really like an historian's, like a memoirist, like a reporter. But the view with which I was looking at Punjab, and I'm saying this deliberately here, I'm saying it to you people deliberately, is because to me, Punjab has been a huge laboratory. It has been an agrarian laboratory. It has been a socio-political religious laboratory. Most of the things that are happening now in India have been tried, tested, they have failed in Punjab, but they are still implemented in the rest of India. And this is the irony. And this is where I want to speak to folks who belong to sciences. I know most of you are social scientists, but you sit in an institution, such an esteemed institution. And I want to talk to you about, look at what is happening. And how do we really break this, this silence of the scientists, or the way governments after governments in the last 2 years have completely blamed scientists? Oh, science didn't tell us enough. I mean, science can't tell you about a new virus which is just discovered. I mean, like, hello, to ask that from scientists is wrong. And yet they do the same thing again and again. And then media selectively reports, and then some things are exaggerated. Hydrochloroquine works, hydrochloroquine doesn't work. Ivermectin works, ivermectin does not work. Masks are required, masks are not required. Vaccine works, vaccine does not work. And this is not only about vaxxers and anti-vaxxers. That is a different debate. It is just how governments behave. Oh, if there is a vaccine, first of all, it beguiles me to understand how, if something like AIDS, which is 30, 35 years old, does not have a vaccine, and a new virus suddenly in 8 months has a vaccine, whose interests are being played out here? Is there a pharma thing going on here? Is there money being put by corporations? Are governments bending to those corporations? I don't know, but seems something strange here. Of course, Oxford was looking at the same variety of viruses for much longer. But then when you have vaccines, you have like 5, 6 vaccines. What is this? Is it a mall? I mean, you have this shop and that shop and that shop and that shop, and then one shop runs short of one dose. And then you say that, OK, take it from the second shop. It is OK. It is better, if you take 2 different vaccines. I mean, where is scientific understanding playing a role on all that markets and corporations and governments and policymakers are doing? And Punjab, largely to me, at least, when I look at Punjab, why did I go to Punjab? I went to Punjab because the situation that is now happening in Afghanistan was the kind of situation that Punjab was facing in the 80s when I was growing up there. And then in 1993, peace returned. Peace on the back of what? Peace on the back of a 23% vote. Now, 23% people voted in the 1993 elections. And on the basis of that, you form a government. And then all the demands that were there during the militancy years, during the separatist years, the demands that are chartered in the Anandpur Sahib resolution, which was even a decade before that, none of them were met when the governments came around. And it has been 25 years since the government has been there again. Nothing has been fulfilled. So I went to look at Punjab, which my own childhood was brutalized by militancy, and I came to see, has peace come back here? Do we have peace in this place now? And I found there is no peace. There is, in fact, immense discontent among the people. And this Punjab that I was looking at, this is the book. Sorry, I should show you the book once at least. This is the book, you know. This peace that I was looking for, I realized, has not been there even 50 years back when Punjab was trifurcated. You know, one part was given away to Himachal Pradesh. Punjab was divided into Punjab and Haryana over a language issue. And before 75 years, India was partitioned. Punjab and Bengal were divided. You know, just brutally, you just draw an ad hoc line between people, between cultures, between language, between every single thing that helps you belong somewhere over the land. And just like that, we were two nations. 100 years back, there was this great Sikh political agitation to reclaim its gurdwaras, its religious places, from the hands of the British appointed, you know, pseudo priests, mahants, what they're called. 150 years before that, Sikhs for the first time started coming together and they started making an organization, you know, and they started looking at, okay, let's look at our issues, how to deal with things where war is not the only way to deal with it, where the sword is not what gives us justice. You know, the Singh Sabhas were formed. 175 years before that, Punjab was finally annexed, the last kingdom to be annexed by the British, after Maharaja Ranjit Singh was killed. And Maharaja Ranjit Singh's empire, in that sense, included this Afghanistan of today. So when you come up with this newfangled map of Akhand Bharat and, you know, you put in everything south of China into it, I mean, and that's the dream on which, you know, the saffron people get their high, you know, like there are stories of how the nation was divided, what you are adding, what you're subtracting, why we have this current configuration, on whose blood is this configuration made, and is that blood assuaged? Has there been peace in this land called Punjab? Similarly, has there been peace in Bengal? You know, has there been peace in the rest of the country? I mean, in Kashmir, for example, in Bastar, in northeastern India, you know, these are the borders of the country, and they have been aflame for way too long. And all that I find, personally, I find, and consider me biased if you may, the central India just determines what should be the national policy, what should be India. South India doesn't agree to it, East doesn't, North doesn't, it doesn't matter. It's we who are the most populous and the poorest and the ones who will not develop. We are the ones who will decide what the nation is. So I went to Punjab to look at what is Punjab. Is it everything that this nation defines it as? Or is there something else happening here? And that is why the first chapter, I'll give you a little summary of the chapters and then we can get on to Q&A. You know, the first chapter is called Sakt, wound, because I was wounded by Punjab, and not by Punjab per se, but ever since I came out of Punjab in 1990 and lived in the rest of the country. I now live in Bangalore. You know, I would have loved to come and give you the talk there, but in this COVID, you know, we don't know what COVID is. You know, so it's a wound of how Punjab is talked about. You know, when I was a child, my father, I was growing up in Odisha, in Rourkela. Jawaharlal Nehru had given the call that these steel plants and dams are the temples of modern India. And my grandfather, who was himself a freedom fighter, he said, oh, right, that is good. You know, so you have done making the Bhakra Dam, now go there to Rourkela to make steel for the country. And just like that, 2,000 kilometers, my grandparents sent my asthmatic father, you know. But everybody around him would always address him with a G, Sardar G. And I was like, where is this G coming from? And they said, because Sikhs are considered the soldiers, the farmers, the transporters of the country, you know, they have made this nation. That sounds very good, though there is no requirement for G, but it sounds good. And suddenly on 31st October 1984, my father was in the bazaar, in Rourkela, just gone to buy some vegetables, and the shopkeepers charged at him. Why? Because Mrs. Gandhi was assassinated and because the Sikhs had killed them. And just like that, we turned into the traitors and terrorists of the country. And Punjab started burning. It burned. It had been burning since 78 actually, but it started burning really after 84 until 93, that whole decade and a half, I think. So this wound, and you're looked at, and then things happened in trains when we would travel from Punjab to Odisha. And the way people would twice or thrice, my father was just saved of lynching, in these trains, alone, Sardar in a compartment full of other people, some debate or other comes up, So this is a wound I carried with me, and I went to look at the wound to understand it. And what is the first thing I saw when I reached there? I landed there very, very serendipitously when there was a huge farmer labor dharna going on, because the white fly had infested the cotton crop and there was huge losses. And the people were protesting against the government. And I asked myself, I said, this is a pest. A pest has infected your crop. What has government got to do with it? Why are you protesting against the government? And that showed me the answers to what I had not understood until now. And that is what is this great science breakthrough we had in the development of modern India, the Green Revolution. And scientists made that happen. Laboratories created those dwarf quality wheat, those pesticides, those insecticides, of course. Corporate wise, Xylon B makers made these pesticides, Zyklon B, where it was used in Auschwitz to gas Jews in Hitler's camps. The same poison being given to insecticides, pesticides, fertilizers being manufactured at a huge rate. And suddenly this 1.5% of the country starts feeding 70% of the nation. That is why I call it a laboratory. That is why I'm saying Punjab has been used. And what gets my goat really is, we'll come to that in the very last point of the talk, but I'm just stating it here. What gets my goat is that, okay, the country needed food. Whoever could create food, the country chose. And they chose this area to make food for the country. Then the rest of the country started producing its own food. There is a huge debate in agriculture circles on whether we should really bank on canal-based lands or on rain-fed lands. India is 90% rain-fed. How to recreate this green revolution in different states. While all that is going on, and many other parts of the country became food sufficient, why did the policies in Punjab remain stagnant? Why were subsequent policymakers not informed by science? That once you have done something, you bring in a crop like rice, which is not at all the crop of Punjab, and you grew it in huge bumper crops. Every second year, the production would double in Punjab in the 1970s and 80s. But then it is drying up the waters of the land. You have hit the third aquifer. There is no more water in the land. Why wouldn't you move towards diversification? Why wouldn't you move towards moving away from paddy and bringing in, say, lentils, say jowar, say bajra, say other crops which are not that water intensive? Why won't you move towards cash crops? And the science is giving you all these alternatives. It's not that the Punjab Agriculture University or the other agriculture scientists all over the country and the world are not working and grappling with these situations. They are finding solutions. Why isn't policy being informed by that? This is a crisis. By chance, when I just reached Punjab to cover this farm agitation, within the days of the agitation, the last day actually, suddenly there were incidences of what is called Beadabi, which is sacrilege of the holy book. It's been 5 years now. Now it's quite clear who was behind it, what what game was being played. But I realized something, you know what? And that was that in 1984, the year which is my personal watershed year, because Darbar Sahib, the Golden Temple was attacked, the Operation Blue Star had happened. And after that, the anti-Sikh pogrom happened in October, November of the same year. I was 11 years old, and it just changed my thinking, you know, about how the nation and all that. The ploy at that time was also that farmers were agitation for better electricity rates, which was turned into a religious issue. And now again, when I went there to see their political economic struggle, it was turned into a religious issue. The same pattern. Repeatedly, the politicians play the same patterns with us. And we get all wrapped up in it and riled and angry, and we do mistakes. Mistakes as in we take to violence, and then the state crushes us with more violence, and the situation just keeps bubbling, doesn't get solved. After that, there are two chapters in which I give a little bit of a contextual history of Punjab, which I think is important for the reader who is not a Punjabi. We are translating the book into Punjabi. We, I think, did away with one chapter because there's no need for Punjabi audience for it, but a non-Punjabi audience. And we actually know so little about other states. You know, the two people I can see here, one is from Kerala and one is from Assam, you know, and we don't know their histories. We don't know who they are. So I needed to put that chapters there, you know. They're called illness and they're called faith, you know. And to me, the illness of Punjab is in political terms. See, modern democracy is based mostly on Jean-Jacques Rousseau's ideas of the social contract between a state and the citizens. And to me, the illness of Punjab is that this social contract between the citizens and the state was ruptured. What does social contract mean? It means that citizens tell the state that, OK, we give up certain rights of ours under the assurance that you will protect them for us. We will not fight with each other over them. And the states tell the citizen, yes, we assure you we'll protect you, but you will have to give us taxes for it. You will have to listen to our orders for that. And that's the social contract on which modern democracy is based. And I feel the illness of Punjab is really that social contract was ruptured in 1984, and it has never been rectified, and it is still not rectified. And the area will remain in perpetual distress unless both the state and the people, and when I say state, it is state government and central government, and the people, they come together and they find a solution for themselves. They try to work towards healing. They try to work towards peace, and they try to work towards economic prosperity for all, and they work on social justices. The book is actually called Faultlines through Punjab, but it's actually a plea for social justice and economic justice for Punjab through healing, to look at Punjab as a post-conflict land. And remember, again, as I told you earlier, the conflict of partition, the conflict of, you know, the 80s, the conflict of betrayal of governments, all these conflicts. And the conflict of Green Revolution, because I mean, the aftermath of Green Revolution is what? Cancer trains running through Punjab, the area becoming so satiated with pesticides and chemicals that the food is poisoned there now. Then I go to another thing, which again, going back to my father's trope of soldiers, farmers, transporters, this Punjabi male is considered this alpha male figure, you know, they're always at the forefront, they're always fighting. And yet, the number of clinics treating masculine weakness in Punjab, Mardana Kamzori, are just mind-boggling. So I'm looking at what is this Mardanagi, what is this masculinity for which Punjab is so famed, you know. And I'm seeing again another, I met doctors, I met sexologists, and I saw another thing there, and that is again going back to, you know, the kind of milk we are drinking, the kind of food we are eating, the kind of chemicals we are putting into ourselves, which are actually creating Mardana Kamzori. So I was baffled by that. The next chapter is called Dawa, medicine, but it's actually about drugs. And again, I go back to an early chemist, who the father of pharmacology, his name is this long, I mean, like, so, but he said something very, very interesting. He said that anything that you consume in small quantities, it is helpful, it is a medicine. But as soon as you change the scale, you take too much of it, it can turn poison, even water, even oxygen. You know. So the whole issue of Punjab is that the scale at which things have happened there have completely confused people. And then there is this huge influx. Again, I relate it to post-militancy years. Suddenly the land rates went up. When land rates went up, brokers got into it. When brokers got into it, they needed musclemen. When they needed musclemen, gyms opened. When gyms opened, protein diets and this whey products and all came in. And then steroids came in, and then drugs came in, you know. The NDPS Act, you know, the Narcotics Act of India, how it is restrictive and how limited it is, and how it has actually spawned all this illegal drug trade. And I talk about Afghanistan here. I mean, like, you must remember, Afghanistan is the 90% of the world's opium is produced in Afghanistan. And, you know, and this is this whole, the American operations there, you know. Was it called Enlightening Freedom or something like that? It's some name like that, you know, it had. And what it did to the Taliban, and how the Taliban pushed their farmers to grow more and more opium to fund their guns. And then, you know, Iraq is at war. Russia is not allowing trade to happen through them. Pakistan is one channel through which these drugs are going into the market. And where is the other channel? It is Punjab. You know? So these issues are much larger geopolitical than what, say, you make into a movie like Urta Punjab, and, you know, you again manage to vilify the same people. So to understand drugs, you know, then the main issues of, I mean, not only politically, but politically the issue of water, you know, I mean, like, very, very simple. There is a riparian and a basin law in the world by which waters of rivers are distributed. I mean, you can't keep playing a game with Punjab and, you know, deny it its water resources just because Haryana needs water, just because Delhi needs electricity, you know. So that demand has been old, it can be negotiated, it can be solved, but sadly it doesn't happen. It has grown on. Land is a social issue also, because, I mean, technically the hierarchy in the rest of India about the Brahmin being on the top and the Dalit and the Avarnas being at the bottom does not work out in Punjab quite that way. In Punjab, for 2000 years now, in Punjab, the landowner is the Brahmin, you know, and that's the Jat. You know? And then there are others, and there are conflicts over land. So I document how there is a Dalit group which actually has been fighting for their legally mandated land that they should be getting, but they don't get because the processes are so hijacked by community politics. So there is a story of that. Then loan, you know, I mean, there are statistics. Now you are all familiar with the farmers' protests, so you would know all the statistics of this. But the amount of loan on Punjab and the amount of loan on Punjab's farmers and landless laborers, you know, I think 73,000 crore is a loan on farmers and landless laborers. 2,25,000 crore is the loan on Punjab. Punjab is in fact even paying back the loan. 1 lakh out of that 2,25,000 is for the expenses incurred by Punjab in the militancy years. I mean, hello. Where is the nation again? What is the nation doing? Who was Punjab fighting against in those militancy years? You know, just so that the center can put load on it, put the burden of paramilitary forces on Punjab. It's the same story with Assam. It's the same story with Kashmir. You know, how do you compute? How do you do your calculations? Where is intent in policy, and what is that intent is the question. Talk about caste. Talk about a new politics that has started happening in the Sikh groups, which is on, you know, whether you have long hair or short hair. whether you are Sahajdari or Keshdari, depending on that, you can vote in Gurdwara elections. Depending on that, there are these representatives chosen from the community. And what are you really representing, and where have you managed to bring any amount of focus on the real issues of the Sikh community? That you don't do. You just want control on the temples, on the Gurdwaras, and so there is the chapter called Patit, apostate, which is what I am. And then we talk about the border, which is a very, very important part of Punjab. This is the border. I mean, from Moon, you can see the Great Wall of China, and you can see the Indo-Pak border in Punjab. 550 kilometers of length, 150,000 halogen lamps on it. At night time, this border can be seen from the moon, from space. And it is such a critical state for India, and yet how India treats it. It only villainizes it. It only keeps talking about, these people are like that, these people are like that. It never brings a healing touch to these border states, which is a very critical border. And when I was still traveling, I was actually slated to go to Pakistan, and I couldn't because the Uri attack happened, and I went to Punjab instead. And I asked farmers right on the border, I said, 7 times in the last 7 decades, you have been moved in and out of your land. Which time was the easiest and which time was the hardest? Because, when armies fight your wars for your nation, they need to be supported. And that support comes from local networks. That support comes from these border villages, those villages which are 1 meter from the border. Those are the villages which are going to support any mightiest or weakest army in the world, whether it is from any nation with any nation. And it is these Punjabi farmers, these Sikh farmers actually, who have supported the army. And yet, national policies and debates and this whole Balakot incident and all of that are manufactured in TV studios. They're manufactured in TV studios. And this is how when you are there on the ground, you see what should be the discourse, where is the discourse, how much is the gap between these people and that discourse, and you see whose interest that discourse is going to help solve. I mean, today it's been 2 years. We have no understanding of why the Pulwama blast happened, why those 40 armed personnel died in it, but it influenced the national election. So being on the ground shows you things which you never will ever learn watching television or looking at internet or listening to other people or on what is called this modern university, the WhatsApp university and all that. And then education. It's pathetic, the Punjab's level of government school education. And the private is not doing any better either. In fact, during this Corona time now, many students have moved from private to the government again, because they realize that private is also not giving them what they need and taking so much fees. Punjab recently got some award of best education, and I laughed when that award came through. You don't give awards just because children are leaving schools and joining your schools. You have to look at what is the content of this education. What does this education enable you to do? I mean, sadly, since it's World War II, I mean, most of our education is now considered to be made fit for the market to be able to earn a job for yourself. That's not the purpose of education, by the way, but it's just manufactured, it's industrialized, But there is 40 lakh youth in Punjab in a population of 2.6 crore, 40 lakh youth, which is without jobs. What will they do? So why are you training people if you can't give them jobs? So these are the ironies that the state plays out in. And where are the jobs if there is no industry in the state because it's a border state? If industrial land acquisition is so fraught with trouble because it never does justice to the farmers or to others, where industries will be created, and so they fight against it as well, then how will you create jobs if the government will not hire, if there are thousands of teachers openings lying pending for 20 years because there is a corruption case filed in the High Court, no school teachers, no college teachers, no electricity department, no road transport services, all privatized now. Where can the state create jobs? And yet, election after election, it promises, we'll give you so many jobs, we'll give you this, we'll give you that. So how farcical is the whole thing? Then there is the issue of language as well in Punjab, and it's a big issue. The value for Punjabi language itself. Where does the state think that the language is taught to children, to younger children? What is the state's bias against teaching that language to the children? But there are different levels of conspiracies about that also. And finally, not finally, but the second last chapter is called Corpses. And that is the chapter of the human rights violations in Punjab in the last 50 years. When I started working on the book and I reached Amritsar, I met this photographer whose photo actually is the, the end sheet of the book. You won't be able to see it very well here, but I'll just put it up for you. It's a photo of a few people sitting on top of a huge tower next to Golden Temple, Darbar Sahib, I call it. I don't like the word Golden Temple. Golden means golden trinkets that you get in bus stops. It doesn't mean gold. So to call a temple of fake gold is not really my way of addressing that sacred space. So to me it is Darbar Sahib. They were just sitting on top on the day the place was first opened after to civilian population after Operation Blue Star. So there are these people who climb on top of the tower and are just looking down at all the bloodshed, all the destruction. I mean, the army has tried very hard to clean this premises, but still there are lots of remains of the war that happened there for 6 days, And I felt that they were bewildered. And I have felt bewildered ever since. So I took that picture from him and he told me, Satpal Danish told me, he said, if you want to understand Punjab, you have to learn to count its corpses. And what are those corpses of Punjab? Roughly, the same number of people who died during the militancy years have died now through farmer and labor suicides. One was a war against a state. But what was the other? It's a war against the feeders of the country. Overall, 4 lakh people have died in India through farmer labor suicides in the last 20 years. And then there are disappearances, and then there are extrajudicial killings. And there has been no, in spite of government promises. I mean, in 1998, when Prakash Singh Badal from the Shromani Akali Dal was contesting elections, he said, oh, we will carry out a thorough inquiry into all extrajudicial killings. When he got power, nothing was done. You know why? Because during the militancy years, for 5 years, from 1986 to 1991, 1987 to 1992, there was continuous president's rule in Punjab. Because the judiciary had recused itself, the executive was only the police and there was no politician. So the police became a force unto itself. So these 3 pillars of democracy, plus a 4th one if you take media, this is the horse that should be running with development, right? It was reduced to a 1-legged horse, the police. And what the police did then, the police continues to do today, the same kind of exploitation. Of course, it doesn't murder that much, but the corruption, the drugs, the involvement in all sorts of land deals, and it does it with impunity because democracy has not been able to hold police accountable. And when you can't hold police accountable, you can't bring justice to the society. So these are, in my opinion, the fault lines of Punjab, that if Punjab breaks, it will break on these lines: caste, land, water, faith, religion, the names of the chapters. And the last chapter, I called it birthday because, again, serendipity or what, in 2017, the assembly elections took place on my birthday. And I had been covering, like I had covered it for 1.5 years, and I continued traveling in Punjab for another year or so after that, just to understand what was going on and to understand the hollowness of our electoral democracy and how the real issues do not get addressed. And now last 5 minutes I'll take, because I've given 45 minutes, is what I considered the fault lines of Punjab have actually now translated into something else. They have become the fault lines of Punjab. Because all the differences that I talked about here, all these, cracks on which Punjab could explode, are now sort of come together in this great farmers' protest that is going on in Delhi for the last 9 months. So there is this Punjabi poet Santram Udasi, on whose lines it was, Chorana kari Anandpur Sahib da kile kile nu kulli kulli nu kila bana deange, Don't feel sad about that one fort falling. We shall make every little hut of ours into a fort. And that is what farmers have done. The trolleys, the tents, the protest that they have launched. And what is it against again? It is against. It's not only about farm laws. Please note that. It's not only about demanding MSP. It's not only about that electricity bill and that smoke, that air pollution bill. Those are the demands, of course. But the protest really is that in this nation, for the last 50 years, we have ignored the agrarian sector. When we had the great reforms in 1991, the new liberalism, foreign direct investment, India needed funds, of course it needed, but all that translated only up to urban centers. The whole idea was we'll bring populations from village and we'll start these industries and they will take India into the next century. And we don't need agriculture really. But the fact is 53% of India is agrarian. The fact is that maybe their contribution to GDP is now 15%, but their contribution to sustenance is 100%. And you can't ignore a sector like the way you have done. So the same farmers' protest from which I started the book has taken a new form now in Delhi. And this is exactly where I'm saying, where does science play a role here? I mean, very mathematically, very clearly, these land holdings are small and marginal. 83% of India's farmers have 2.5 to 5 acres of land. You can't do any well-meaning agriculture in that much land. It's impossible to do it. Now, of course, I mean, yesterday an IISc scientist I was talking to, he was telling me that there's something being tried out in Telangana, something called zero budget farming, even on the smallest plot of land, and I said, fantastic. I mean, I would like to go and see it sometime. Maybe that will succeed, maybe that won't, I don't know about that. But the fact is that you need larger land holdings. But should these larger land holdings, even economically it makes sense, because every small farmer can't buy his own tractor, can't dig his own tube well, it costs money. And they don't have money. They are all about 85 or 87% of Punjab's agriculture is under debt. Huge loans they have taken, which they keep hoping to pay season after season. But the fact is that some seasons fail. Every fourth season, in my estimation, fails. The crop is not as good. You don't make enough profits. But what should you do with this large mass of small land holdings? P. Sainath calls it that the earlier assaults of neoliberalism were on public sector units. You remember how steel plants were sold, how mines were sold, how railways is being sold, how Air India has been put on sale many times. You never got a customer for it. Electricity boards are being sold, education is sold off, healthcare is sold off. All this is public sector areas. But this is an attack on the largest private agglomeration of property in the world. Should it happen? Should it not happen? Should we find ways to deal with it? What if there are economists, there are scientists, there are engineers who have found ways to deal with it? Is policy listening to them? Is the government listening to them? You know, it's very sadly, and this is what they play this game with you guys also. I'm aware of it. I mean, I can state it in my words. You can correct me in the Q&A. But I think the whole idea in which we look at science itself today in India, at least, has undergone a huge change. Because to me, the scientist is somebody who is trying to understand phenomena around him, trying to understand how processes work, what don't work. To me, that science is open to falsification. If you know a bit of philosophy of science, I mean, we had the positivist idea of science, but ever since Karl Popper, it is falsification is the aim of science. If your experiments fail, if you continue to make mistakes, you're actually bettering science. That is why I said right in the beginning, people should not be looking at scientists to answer about an unknown virus. You know? Scientists are trying to understand the process. But scientists are not only seen for that much now. There is this huge push on scientists, and I know many of them, where they're being asked now increasingly to interface with the public. I mean, I don't think it's the job of scientists. That's the job of writers like me to do it. Why should you have to talk to public to bring science to people? Will the government listen to science? Bring science to government, not to public. You know, leave the public part to us. And the worst idea about science that I have heard is that technology and science are seen as the same thing. They are not. Absolutely not. Science is pure research. You know, and technology is application of science to make machines, to make human life better. But they are being collapsed. This is, you see, this is languaging. This is how insidiously agendas on professions are changed. And this is how insidiously Punjab has been changed in public perception over the centuries. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Aman, for this very insightful and also very emotional account of Punjab and the history of Punjab. We'll take some questions now. You may unmute yourself, whoever wants to ask the question, or you can type in your question in the chat box and I can read it out.
Yeah, Sarah has a question.
No, I have to leave the helpline.
Okay, sure. Thank you so much. Thank you.
We'll give 2 minutes, maybe.
You have a question, ask.
I don't have a question. We'll just give 2 minutes.
Yeah. Shows you everybody has temporarily joined the chat. Huh? Who has permanently joined it?
I just wanted to come in. I'm Bhavni. I don't have a question. Am I audible?
Yeah, you are. Please go ahead.
I don't have a question, honestly, but I got hold of the book some time back and I started reading it, and I couldn't stop because I'm actually a Sikh Sardarni, but you know, when I opened the book and the jacket cover, the first part of the book was Amandeep talking about how, you know, what does it feel to be from a place from where you have no ID card, no asset of identity. So I've never lived in Punjab. I've always lived in UP, Delhi. So for me, to read, it was like an encyclopedia and not like so well researched. And it because I mean, although you've made chapters and thematically put information and put your research accordingly in those chapters, but somehow it feels very free flowing, and somehow, you know, the way you've written it, it feels like the reader has so much to learn. It's so vast. So I mean, I was thinking to myself as a researcher, that the vastness of the book and the kind of job you've been able to do to contain it and to still make it look like it's unending. I haven't finished the book, of course, yet. I'm at like the 7th, 8th chapter, but I am profoundly like thankful because for me, I always wanted to get into this space of understanding, and I'm so thankful that I started this process of understanding Punjab through your book. So thank you, Amandeep.
Thank you so much. If I may just add one small thing to it, don't take my word for granted. I could be wrong. So listen to me, what I'm saying. Thank you for your midway the book. You'll finish it eventually, but read others as well. Understand points of view on it. Yeah, but I'm thankful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm told the chat is not working for some reason. I don't know what. I tried to
ask verbally.
Yeah, please ask verbally.
It was just a nice compliment coming my way. Thank you so much. I think we shouldn't force people to ask.
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah, maybe we should not force if there is no question.
And it's not like some classroom going on. Yeah, this is just a book we are talking about. Please buy the book. And I would actually encourage. For some reason, I get a sense that most people on the call are actually from South India. We have 5 beautiful states. I think we should do books like this on each of these states. 2 or 3 books of on each state. That's what I hope happens, before we are all smothered under one nationalism of this kind that is going on.
Right. Are you writing something on the present farmers' protests, Aman?
I am a daily documenter of it. My website has almost daily updates on what is going on there. I did go down. I did articles for Caravan and others. I keep giving talks. I've written a piece recently. It will come out soon. I just felt that my book hasn't got over. Punjab continues to need to speak to the world, and I'm just facilitating that process.
Right. So I think we can call it a day today.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Aman. Thank you so much for this very insightful, and it's very topical that we are trying to grapple with whatever is happening with the farmers' protest, in the present one. But we need to go back to understand what has propelled it or why it has come to this state. Thank you so much, and we hope.
As I said, not only farmers' protest, even what is going on with COVID,
Right.
And I really feel, I was telling this professor from your institute yesterday, I feel very sad that, there was this notion in the pandemics through the centuries that they're created by God and they can't be helped, and then we started to understand that it's not only God who creates them, and there are things that can be done. But finally, even this pandemic is almost, where has science gone? I'm asking myself during this pandemic. Where has inquiry gone? And or if at all, why are they expecting scientists to have some final finito answers to things? I think I'm appalled by the lack of public understanding of what science is and what science should do in our society. And that makes me very sad.
Thank you, Aman. And we hope to have you more, and we hope to listen to you more on various topics. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, Aman. Bye.